Hello and welcome to the first in our series of how-to webinars, which today centers around license entitlement, specifically ways of getting that data into License Manager. We've got a high number of attendees on the call today, so we're going to place everybody on mute just to eliminate any background noise. But please feel free to use the chat facility should you wish to raise any questions along the way. My colleague Ben is going to be monitoring this. The WebEx is scheduled for 30 minutes and we should wrap up well within that time. But there will be some time at the end should anybody wish to ask any questions. We're going to be recording this session and we'll send out a link for you to review anything that comes up at your leisure. And of course we have our support team available via support@licensdashboard.com should any queries crop up later on and you need any help with those. Really straightforward agenda today. Other than the manual data entry wizard, there are only 3 other ways to get entitlement into License Manager. So that's either through a direct Microsoft license statement import or through our separate SKU mapping service, License Cleanse, or by converting your purchasing records, financials, etc. manually into a format usable by License Manager. Feel free to reach out to your account contact if you'd like to hear more about the License Cleanse service. But for today and for the how-to webinar, we're only going to focus on the Microsoft license statement import, and for other entitlement types, our license import template. The MLS import functionality has been a staple of the product for many years, but beware, we are License Manager, not License Miracle, so we can only work with the data that's provided. Microsoft themselves put disclaimers and have a statement regarding potential limitations of their data, particularly around accuracy, and of course we're restricted by that too. If the MLS is not complete, isn't up to date, doesn't have your most recent purchases, doesn't reflect any divestitures or acquisitions you may have, or even contains somebody else's data, then of course you're going to be importing that data into License Manager and it's not going to be of a great quality. There's a list of handy tips on this slide for you to help check the completeness of your MLS prior to import. But one thing to note, the MPSA needs to be added manually. License Manager does not import this. Again, prior to importing, there's a summary tab in the MLS that will also offer hints to gaps in base licenses, which you might want to check first. Whilst License Manager will perform its own base calculation, there is a high degree of probability for large shortfalls here that License Manager will come to the same conclusion. Have all agreements been included, with the side agreements, with the contract amendments to validate the renewal. All of these slides will be made available as well, so please wait for that to come through from Ben. Okay, so let's import an MLS. So here's an example of an MLS. I've just created some anonymized data in here. And pretty much every column on the transaction data tab is going to get imported row by row into License Manager. And each license ID will feature one of these rows. It will also tell us whether a license should be included in the summary or not. So anything that's included in summary equals no in this column will not get imported. The way that License Manager works is that all of these columns will populate one of the license inventory records. License Manager will look to create a name. It will do some normalization of the name matching as part of the import. It will put through the license description and then it will understand the license model. So is it a license with maintenance, is it software assurance only, etc. So the License Manager will convert that automatically. Where there is a non-specific version, it will look at the coverage end date and it will calculate for you what version of what product you're allowed to deploy. Okay, so let's go ahead and import this. So here we are in License Manager. We just go to the License Records workspace, click Import, and we browse to the MLS. So automatically it recognizes that it's not seen this MLS before, so there's a hidden field in the MLS that tells you and identifies the MLS. So it's going to identify it as a new load set. I've set automatically allocate base license, process product transitions and auto register licenses. But if you were to have multiple business units and you wanted to split your licenses and entitlement across those, you might not want to register those to start with. So we're just going to hit import. What License Manager is going to do is it's going to tell us if there are any potential issues with the data that we can decide to act upon before we go ahead and import. So let's just view that log. So straight away it's pointing out licenses that need to be adjusted to a 2-core metric. License Manager will do that for you. It's pointing out entitlement that has potential transition plan or technology guarantees or grandfathering rights. Again, License Manager will do that for you. Here was a transition. So it was, I guess this one was a Windows Server Enterprise that had active SA when Windows Server 2012 came out, and the quantity needs to be adjusted for a 2-to-1. License Manager is going to do all of that for you. It's also seen some old Upgrade Advantage orders. It's also pointing out that some of the agreement start dates and coverage dates don't quite sync within the MLS, something that you might want to check. And it's also telling us that we're going to import products and it's going to restrict it to a latest version for a metric, and then it will be transitioned afterwards. But it's just giving us those details of a line by line set of data. The interesting bit is here where we have some products that don't currently exist in the database, and these are ones that you need to send on to technical support to make sure that they do go into the dictionaries. But the crucial element is these will go in for you and it will create a dictionary record, but crucially it's telling us here that there's 0 licenses with verification error and 631 have been successfully verified. So we're just going to go ahead and import those. So it's just assigned 109 base licenses, then it goes through a phase of applying transitions, so taking things to 2 cores, etc, etc. Then it goes through again of assigning base licenses once it's done the transitioning, and then once it's happy that it's found all of the base licenses it can, it then allocates and registers the licenses. Okay, so there we go. The license records have come in, and it's quite simple. What happens? Everything gets populated here, and we can do any particular reporting. So we pulled through the product, the version that they're allowed to install. So this was a license with maintenance that expired June 2005. So License Manager's calculated that it's 2003. We've got the purchase date, we can populate in costs, etc. We've got any particular constraints, is it academic, etc. So License Manager's done all of that for us. On the notes, it's also tell us where it's come from in that particular MLS. So we've got full details and full history of where it's come through. Just to the right of the reset button, we have the ability to expand some additional filters, so we can look at products that have been transitioned. Here's a SQL Server Data Center single processor license. It obviously had active maintenance when Windows SQL Server 2012 came out, so that stopped Data Center existing. It became Enterprise, and there was a conversion metric where you were allowed so many cores per processor, and then of course that got doubled up because it was Data Center. And again, that calculation gets defined and described in the Notes tab as well. So originally it was Windows Server Data Center 2008 R2. when it came to migrate it to SQL Server Enterprise, it converted it to the 2-core. The original quantity was 4, so that was 4 2-cores, and it transitioned it to 16. So the calculation's being done for us. We have the ability to look at licenses, so we can see licenses without any base licenses. We can see licenses with insufficient base licenses. And there's a good example here of how the system works. This is some Visio Professional SA, software assurance. There was 50 software assurance, but that has insufficient base licenses. If we double click on it and we look at the base licenses tab, we can see that License Manager has only found 22 valid base licenses there, and it's showing us those 22. So software assurance itself has a start date, and it expects to see a base license with a corresponding maintenance end date. So here it's chosen one with a February 2014 expiry date, which links in nicely with a 1st of March 2014 start date of the renewal. It's displaying here any other Visio Professionals with maintenance that could be used potentially if there was a good maintenance expiry date. And we can see that there isn't. These are June 2012, June 2008, June 2012, June 2009. So none of those are going to be valid for this particular purchase. One of the really nice features of the MLS import is that you can import an MLS multiple times. So the 1st of January we import an MLS, and then we come 6 months later to re-import another one. License Manager will do some verification for you, so you don't have to just import the latest files. What it will do is a complete comparison of what's already in the database with the next MLS. It'll show you what's been removed, it'll show you in green anything that's new, and it'll show you in yellow anything that is edited. So let's try and import one of those as well. So we'll just browse to that. And again, it's recognised that it's an existing load set, and it's going to pull through all records. So we're just going to go ahead and import those. So License Manager is currently looking at the second MLS, the one from June. It's looking what's already in the system on a row by row basis. It's working out anything that's not in the second MLS. So that's really important for us to know. We might have divested some licenses. We might have sold on part of our business. It's going to highlight those for us. It's also going to import everything that's new, so everything that it hasn't seen before, and it's going to let us review that as well, because again, the MLS system itself is not infallible. Okay, so let's have a look. So visually we have a clue here, so we've got some reds and we also have some greens if we look high enough up. So that is covered by the load status. So if we have a look at licenses that have been removed, the License Manager is not going to delete these for you. It's not going to make the assumption that the second MLS is correct. It's going to let you make that distinction yourself. So let's just add a new view. So we're just going to look at some additional details about these licenses that have been removed. So this is how the system can sort of help with that. So we're just going to bring through an agreement number, and we're going to put in an expiry date as well. And we're just going to move some of these out. So just created a view called removed. And we're just looking at some of the details of that, and we can see that pretty much everything that's been removed is under the same agreement, with the same agreement expiry date. So I can check and see whether I still have entitlement to install those products or not. If I do, and if it's just a mistake within the MLS, all I'm going to do is change the load status, and I'm going to say these are all valid. Or alternatively, if it is true that the second MLS is correct and these licenses do no longer belong to me, I can delete them from the system. But I'm just going to convert these as valid. Then we can look at the new products. So these are everything that is in the new MLS but not in the database before we imported it. And I'm just going to add in an additional field in here. I'm just going to look at purchase date. I'm just going to lift that up a little bit. So I can see these are all new. I can see the agreement that they were purchased under. I can see the agreement expiry date. And I can see that these are all March and February purchases. So I can see that these are probably, I'm quite happy that these are going to be true entitlement and not somebody else's that have been added to the MLS by accident. So I'm just going to change the load status, and they are valid too. And that's everything to do with the MLS. So License Manager also has some helpful notifications. So again, don't just stop there once you've imported the MLS and reviewed the log file. Do review all licenses without a base. Review unregistered licenses. They're unregistered for a reason. Review all bookmarked items. And crucially, review all items without release dates. We've seen License Manager assign base licenses, but do remember all step-ups are manually allocated. So anything that's a license model equals step-up license with maintenance, you will need to manually assign those licenses. Again, check anything without a base license for status and insufficient base licenses. And don't forget that once you've assigned a base license, that might trigger a sequence of upgrades. So from the license records task, always choose the base license allocation regularly to see if there are new completed licenses that can be used as bases for other upgrades and maintenance licenses. Bookmarked and unregistered licenses, pretty much anything highlighted in the log are bookmarked to make it easier for you to review should you wish. These can be transitions, grandfatherings, step-ups. Some remain unregistered by design, so you can edit. You might choose not to apply a transition. You might be mid-enterprise agreement. You might want to still license your Windows Server by processor because it's financially better for you to do your true-up. Ultimately, you're going to have to migrate to the 2-core OS, but of course you still have the right to purchase licenses by 2-proc. The notes field of each individual record contains the reason, so it'll give you an exact reference description from the log, and of course the row number from the relevant ML. It's essential to review license records, specifically non-specific items without release dates. Because that means that License Manager doesn't have a release date for that particular product in the dictionary. Now quite often you can ignore these because they're just going to be things like the Pro Desktop, Azure or CoreCal, but very, very occasionally they're going to point to some obscure product where License Dashboard support. We're going to need to amend the dictionary, or indeed you need to update yours because it's out of date. Okay, so let's get onto the non-MLS. So let's ignore the license clone service. I've got please feel free to talk to your account contact. But let's say you have entitlement data in Excel or CSV form that you want to get into LM. So it could be a vendor consumption report from online portals. It could be purchase history from your LSP, or perhaps it's records from an internal SAP or Oracle financial system. License Manager comes with an import template where you can transpose data column by column, row by row, and with further manipulation get it imported into LM. Okay, from a discovery perspective, there's a whole raft of diligence and process to make sure we capture accurately all of our active devices and the software installed upon them. So naturally, it's essential to apply a similar degree of governance to the other side of the equation. What are we allowed to deploy, to how many assets, by what metric, and for what term? There are some best practice tips available on the next few slides, covering some basics as well as common pitfalls when it comes to the quality of your data. License Manager is demanding in the quality of data, and for good reason. For the product and vendor, it expects and demands the same naming convention as our dictionaries. All licenses cannot be assigned against installs. So that means if you enter in an Office Plus Professional license instead of Office Professional Plus, naturally it's not going to match what we call it. It will also not inherit any additional context from our growing dictionaries, attributes of products, product categorization, RRPs. If you have a maintenance entitlement to your entitlement, the spreadsheet is going to demand an expiry date and start date, a valid one as well. So you can't put the 31st of February because that doesn't exist. Entering a record without those would be meaningless. We have to be able to understand license term, renewals, and future upgrade entitlement. Okay, so let's see it in action. Okay, so looking at the license records workspace and all of the details that are behind a license, then we've created a template that will populate each and every single one of these cells. So there's an Excel column for each and every one of those. There's some demanding data required. So obviously the manufacturer and product needs to match our license manager dictionaries. We also need to have a recognized metric and license model. And then of course there's some checkboxes here that require a true or false in that particular column to check it or otherwise. But let's just have a quick look at that spreadsheet. The spreadsheet itself comes supplied with License Manager. It's available in the templates folder. And row 2 here gives a name of the field that is related to in the license dashboard inventory screen that I just showed you. Row 3 is a brief descriptor of that data. Row 4 is going to tell you whether that field is required or it's just an optional one. Can you just leave it blank, for example? And row 5 onwards shows some examples of that data. So again, the key ones are going to be here, the product and version. Manufacturer, again, it has to be Microsoft, not Microsoft Corp. Otherwise it's not going to map. Some of the trickier fields are obviously going to be making sure that the metric matches the dictionary, and also that we have a descriptor that matches the license model. So if you spell license incorrectly, then it's not going to work as well. The quantity is essential. If you put that it has maintenance, License Manager will demand that you have a maintenance expiry date and maintenance start date. We have a whole raft of trues and false that needs to be populated in here in order to check those boxes. So if you've put that you've got an upgrade license and you've put is upgrade equals true, false, then of course it will fail on that particular point. So let's see it in action. Here's some Adobe demo purchase data, and your task, I guess, is pretty much to find the relevant column in here and determine in the import spreadsheet where you're going to paste that. Now typically the SKU description is going to be the license description, so it's just a case of copying, finding the license description, and simply pasting the values in there. Nice and straightforward. Here's one fully completed. I've just highlighted in yellow some of the potential challenges that you might face. So for example, we've copied and pasted the Adobe descriptor for the product. And I know from personal experience that the creative suites, we always prefix them in the License Manager dictionaries with Creative Suite Design Standard. So I know full well that these items highlighted in yellow aren't quite going to match. Adobe's versions are their technical versions, and they don't also match that License Manager descriptor. So Photoshop version 9 is actually Photoshop CS2. So I need to convert and change those two. Version 3 is CS3, and Illustrator 16 is CS6. So that's what we call it in the License Manager dictionary. So there's some additional manipulation in there. And of course, if these aren't License Manager descriptors, when you import the data into License Manager, it's going to tell you that it doesn't quite match and that it doesn't exist in the dictionary. Also, the Adobe model, license model, doesn't always match either. So we call AOO license license only. And we expect that, otherwise it won't work. We also call license subscription subscription. So again, just from experience, it's just a case of copy and replace in that particular column. So AOO license, I'm just going to replace that with license only, which is the description required by License Manager. And here it is now all fixed with the correct descriptors in there, the correct suites in there, and of course on the license model page, everything that we require it to be. And at this particular point we save it as an XML file, so XML data. I've already got one prepared, and at that particular point it is ready to import into License Manager. Again, it is likely that you might make some mistakes, and what License Manager will do is it'll try and point out those mistakes to you, so it'll try and help you out with things that you might have wrong. So if I try and import some data that I know shouldn't import without an error, again, License Manager is going to tell you that you might have some invalid data within that spreadsheet. So for example, here on 47, we've actually got a negative number. On these two ones here, we've put in, there's a license quantity when it's actually a maintenance quantity. And here we've got a license that's an upgrade that we've put through as is upgrade equals false. So again, you know, License Manager is going to point out errors on each one, whichever row, and it's going to help you through that to fix anything before it needs to go into the system. Okay, so let's import a fixed file. Again, I'm going to label it as Adobe. I might put today's date. Again, we can view the log, and it's telling us that Photoshop and Premiere Elements 14.0 does not exist within the dictionary. So that's because the License Manager dataset hasn't seen that before. So we need our technical support guys to actually put that into the dictionary and put a product release date against that. But everything else has gone in fine and dandy. Again, if we import it, we can now see the data. And what I like to do is to add in the load set. Again, this gives us an idea of when the license was uploaded. I've got it in here already, so just so again, you know, we can see that it was the 30th of the 8th installation, and that is using License Manager import template. Thank you very much for attending the session. We've had no queries crop up during the chat, so we'll bring it to a close. Anything that crops up, again, please don't hesitate to reach out to support@licensedashboard.com or your account manager if you are interested in hearing any more about the License Cleanse service.